Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 1111 Update podcast. I am joined by one of my favorite people in the entire world, healer Sarah MacDonald.
Good afternoon, Angel. Bless. Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here and to chat with you today. And thank you to everybody joining and listening to us talk, because this is like our favorite thing to do is just to sit and chill and chat about all the deep things.
All of the shit, every single thing.
Yes.
Sarah and I try to have surface conversations, and it just doesn't work. It's like somebody's going to be sobbing, just joking. But usually
Right.
there's a deep dive somewhere along the way.
And it's good medicine. It's good medicine. We love.
Well, and Sarah being, pardon me, Sarah healed me. And some people may know this, some people may not. Sarah was my physiotherapist when I was in Jasper. I was lucky enough to be in her care for 4 months, and we tried to extend it, and then I quit my job. They didn't extend it, so I said, fuck you, I'm out of here. And when I was discharged, Sarah and I were able to become friends, and you are just a mind, body, and soul healer, and I cannot praise you enough for all of that.
Darling, the universe literally plopped you into my life, and I was like, this is amazing. And then when we were able to discharge you, I was like, fantastic. Now I can just put my little professional obligations for boundaries aside and we can be friends.
Yes.
And it's been, gosh, how long have we been friends now? I think going on like 8 years,
Yeah,
something.
7 or 8 years, which is
Yeah, we've had a couple of epic road trips together that were we made the best of situations that were rough, and we have healed each other over the years. Like the
yeah.
insight and intuition, the presence and healing you've brought to my own life and
Uh,
struggles, like it has been such a reciprocal and beautiful friendship. I'm so grateful for you, my
I
dear.
am so grateful. Sarah is that one friend who I called when I was breaking up with my ex-boyfriend in the middle of a pandemic and had no money, no job, no car, and was like, hey, can you take me to Winnipeg? And she's like, give me a second. Yeah, actually, I'll be there in 6 hours.
Happened to have like vacation time off and talking to you, I could just hear in your voice that things were not okay. You tried to pass it off. You were like, I'm going to have a surface conversation. And I was like, no, ma'am. Looked at my husband. I was like, hey, prep the guest room. I'm coming back with Krista in like 10 hours. Okay.
Oh my God. And
And man,
that car was just like a hug from the universe to sit in and be
mhm.
held. Sarah and I were driving through, I don't even know where, and it was like the middle of the night, and we were on a highway, and we saw this car coming like full speed off the exit, and both of us braced ourselves for impact, and the car disappeared.
Yep. It was just like, I remember that. Gosh, I hadn't really remembered that until just now. And it was almost like we braced and then it didn't hit in that moment. But there are some parts of me now that wonder if that was like this little omen of like, keep each other close.
Yeah.
Y'all are gonna need each other even when you're across the continent from each other. Yeah. Like
I got
when
lit
I
up
think
when you
about
said
that,
that.
it's wild how many synchronicities there have been in the start of our friendship and then as it's evolved throughout
Yeah.
time too. And we've both had this like ripple impact on each other where we don't see each other or talk to each other every day, but when shit's real and we need somebody who's going to be that honest presence with lots of love and compassion, but that no nonsense, like, yo, pal, you're not seeing certain things and you need to be paying attention, or that person who can like offer that validation, that
Perspective.
confirmation. Yeah,
Yes.
the perspective, all of that. And I mean, we also just vibe on the crystals too.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Um, Sarah is like the crystal aficionado in my life. She's holding, is that a carnelian?
no, this is an Elmwood calcite
Oh
from Tennessee. Yeah, like I'm a
gosh.
your girl's a whore for crystals. Some
Oh,
people invest in stocks. I invest in rocks.
yeah. I love that so much. But you
And
know what?
and per my shirt, I don't give a succulent what
Not
people
even
think about it.
a little
Not one.
fuckulent. I'm upset that you are fucking perfection. I can't even tell you. Sarah's mood will always lift mine. It does not matter, even in the depths of hell, just connecting to you brings me up so much. I can't even tell you.
Same, but never in the way of like the kind of toxic positivity that sometimes people will bring around, but rather in like the presence of like, hey, let's find like a little bit of levity with like either dark humor, little twisty bits, little just like letting our minds wander and we just go merrily skipping along here.
If that ain't it,
It's
if that ain't it.
it's true magic because I feel the same about you that like I can come to our interactions in any mood and I will be in a much better energetic space afterwards for it.
Oh, and like truly, I find I've said this to you in text before, having these peer relationships who people who work in similar industries, who do similar light work, to have somebody who is not only like a respected and loved friend, but like a respected and loved colleague who's able to give feedback, give insight, intuition, tap in, tap out, pull in, pull out, like whatever it is that needs to happen. It's such a fucking gift. And it's so healing to my inner child, parts of me who never really feels held in these scenarios. So I cannot thank you enough for coming into my life.
Same, Angel, same. And like how we just kind of water each other professionally too. Like it's not even professionally, it's in our passions and how that radiates out in the world. But like we're constantly up leveling with each other over the
Yeah.
years. And that's been one of the real gifts of this like long-term friendship is to like witness that and be impacted by each other. Like
Oh,
it's been so cool the influence that you have had on my like healing journey and my work moving forward. And like, yeah,
that's
so grateful for you.
just like touch. What can I say? Just a bad bitch for life, forever and ever.
Yes.
And when I was coming in to see Sarah as my physio, I was so drawn to Sarah. Like there was just she's an aura, she's an energy, she's a fucking vibe. To know her is to love her, and to have never have met her is to I pity you. You know, like
You're
but
so sweet.
but Sarah was like one of those people like you were like the hippie spiritual chick like that was doing physiotherapy that I was so drawn to because typically when I think of a physiotherapist, I think of like a Patagonia puffer jacket and like like a Lululemon pant, like jogger pant with deep
In
pockets.
in a in the transient hippie mountain town, I was the woo woo physio girl, which should tell you everything. And when you and I met, I was just fresh off of my Reiki attunement, my very first Reiki attunement, and like
Oh,
my first big spiritual retreat. So when you and I met, I was vibing high, and like my whole approach to healing had changed because by that point I'd been in like the movement as healing realm for a
yeah.
long time. And so that part felt pretty um handled for me, but
Mhm.
approaching and addressing like that spiritual healing, that deeper healing, that was something that honestly like my early interactions felt a little chaotic. Like we had just kind of been drop kicked into this deep ocean of like, yeah, you have pain or yeah, you have dysfunction here, but it's not coming from this like biomechanical place that we want to assume it's from. Like, yeah, I can
Right.
find all kinds of things to say it's coming from, but really the issues are so much deeper. And this is something I see all the time in my own body and in my
Hmm.
own practice,
Yeah.
where out of nowhere I'll have pain and I'm looking at my body. I'm like, I didn't do anything to you, bitch. What? What?
And what is it saying?
Usually it's like there's shit here that you put in a doom box and you stored in this corner of your tissues and now you need to clear it out. Like
Tick, tick,
I was
boom,
this
bitch.
Oh, I was a stuff it down whore in terms of like emotions for a
Yeah.
long time. I was a push through, get it done. Nothing was going to stop me for like the first 25 years of my life. And it worked really well for me.
Yeah.
I could go through a lot of like chaotic, traumatic things and just keep going. Um, like for quick example, in 2008, I was clipped while driving on a freeway, spun out, hit the center divider at like 120 kilometers an hour,
Oh,
had a brain bleed, was at the hospital, still tried to go to work the next day.
Jesus.
And like, again, I didn't make the wisest decisions then because in my programming, I was taught you just tell yourself okay, and 2 hours later, you should feel better and be able to keep going. We don't have time for things to slow us down.
Suck it up,
And
buttercup.
exactly like
Yeah.
button it up, princess, let's go was a phrase frequently said to me, and
Wow.
mostly about like emotional things. The physical things, yeah, so my body would start to rebel when I would ignore an issue for too long, when I stuffed it down for too long, or when the subtle triggers the universe sent me weren't getting through.
The
The
anvils weren't
universe was
working.
like, yeah, the universe was like, we gotta floor this stubborn this stubborn one. All right, this one is let's floor her for a bit until she gets it. And boy, once I got it, it really revolutionized how I approached healing.
Mm,
It wasn't just a physical issue, it was
yeah.
emotional. And then that pushed me even further to understand that there was nothing I could control and do to make other people feel better.
Right.
Rather, I had to bring the presence and offer whatever perspective and awareness and just be the support for their own journey. That took a
Wow.
lot of humbling because my education told me that we were about outcomes.
Yeah.
How many how many sessions could you utilize to get somebody better between assessment and discharge? And that just never vibed quite right with me. And
No.
it's because it forced a control paradigm on something that doesn't obey the capitalist time demands.
Well, I mean, look at me. It was 4 months of physiotherapy, and I went in for a sciatic pain, and then it was glutes, and then it was hip, and then it was abductors. So, like 4 months working through four different things to the root, and it was the emotions that were caught in my abductors that had done all of this damage. So I just know
Mm-hmm.
from personal experience that what you're saying. And the only reason I was able to go for 4 months is because I had a Fortune 500 company paying for all of my treatments.
And like it's one of those things that I like to operate as a healer because as a healer, I'm not trying to the business side of it isn't my very first priority. It's a necessary part of
Yeah.
practice, living in a practical world, but it's one of those things where a lot of the time I felt when I was just a physiotherapist, I was pigeonholed into the business side of it. When I'm a
Right.
healer, this is just part of my energy. This is just how I exist in the world.
Yeah.
And I want to be able to give time and space and share whatever like knowledge and energy I can to help people heal because it makes such a positive ripple. Because I
Mm,
look at and have gotten the privilege to witness how you have truly alchemized that experience and it has catalyzed other things in your world in your realm and that
yeah.
awareness for yourself has been such like a mirror for me too in a lot of ways in the sense that watching you this driven badass independent like Jill of all trades master of them all innovator of them as well
Ooh.
tackle these these things and be present with them and give yourself that time
Yeah.
and accept that help and accept that support. I was like, ooh, this would make me uncomfortable to be on the receiving side of that. And and it has been interesting like to see um how that witnessing and participating in somebody else's healing holds up the mirror for my own participation in my own realm of that. That's one of the
Absolutely.
things that I value so much.
The mirrors, and it's true, like even, when we were driving from Edmonton to Winnipeg, just personally the mirrors that were coming up in our lives. Like I was going through a
Hmm.
major breakup and you were choosing to stay, like,
Yeah.
choosing to be in your relationship, not just relegating the fact that you are in this relationship. It was like we both made our choices. And
Hmm.
so it was like it's so brilliant when we get to see the mirrors and we actually awaken to them, to be like, oh my God, okay, yes, I see her being fucking amazing and driven and incredible, and oh my God, wait, that's activated in me too. Weird.
Hmm. Yep. It's like,
But you were
ooh, that's present in me too.
that's something's rumbling, the little spidey
Yeah.
senses are tingling. Did you
Yeah.
mention that before you had done the spiritual retreat, before you had kind of gotten into that wellness weekend, that you weren't necessarily integrating the wellness as much into your physiotherapy? Like what did your spiritual awakening look like? Like what kind of journeys did you go on?
Yeah, so I had a lot of building blocks to like my spiritual awakening, and I would say like my dark night of the soul came in between like 2016 and 2017.
Mm.
Um, so at that point in my life, I was about 5, 6 years into a fertility journey with my husband, and we had had one loss already. We had done a lot of different tests and treatments and all these different things, and I had gotten pregnant and then very, very early miscarriage, and it absolutely devastated me.
Oh, sorry.
And that, thank you, that like loss and the process of that grieving led me to a point where it was heal or die, basically.
Understood.
And I came to a point where I was like, I need to do something. And I
Mhm.
knew it wasn't just like the loss of the miscarriage that I was going to have to like come to terms with and grapple with. I knew that there was a lot more attached to it, that once I opened it up, I was going to need a lot of space to, and like guidance
Yeah.
to go through it. But it wasn't psychology. I'd been to a therapist and with a therapist for years and years and years and years. It wasn't what I needed. So I had always been an intuitive person and just followed my gut. My
Mhm.
gut is really, really strong, that intuition. And when it says to go somewhere, I often don't need a logical like backing behind it. It's more just a faith of like, okay, it says go and won't leave me alone until I can, all right, let's do it. And so I was looking online one day for different types of like healing retreat centers. I wanted to go somewhere where I didn't have to worry about housing or driving or like anything like that. If I could have stayed local, that would have been nice. But I also
Yeah.
wanted to go somewhere where I was not known at all.
Yeah.
I needed nobody's expectations of who I was going to be coming out of this. So I found this healing retreat and yoga school in Thailand. And so I went to this little island in Thailand that is basically just a giant rose quartz rock in the
Uh,
center of the
heaven
ocean.
on earth.
It was amazing. When I stepped onto it, I was like, oh, I was like, okay, we're here. And like that whole trip was transformative in a lot of ways. The school that I went to basically talked to me about what I needed, sat down with me, and curated my days. So when I initially went, my husband Mike had a really hard time with the idea of me going somewhere that he wasn't there to protect me, undergoing this deep healing without him there is like my grounding place and
Or
that sort of
deep.
thing. You okay?
Mhm.
But
Uh,
he was also supportive once he went through his own process. And so when I would tell him what I was doing, he was like, "What'd you do today?" And I'm like, "Well, at 7 a.m., I started with a meditation where I was screaming for like 15 minutes. And then I had to go sit in silence and stillness for an hour and just focus on my breath going in my nose. And I just wanted to die. And then I had to go to a bio dance class and, you know, like all of these things. And then I had lunch. And so I'd be in meditations and healing classes and yoga classes from like 7 a.m. until like 9 o'clock at night. Um, and it was eviscerating, is one of the best ways to put it. But it really brought a lot of things up to the surface about what I had been programmed to believe I had to fulfill. And it created a lot of space. So all of that screaming and like energetic purging, it's kind of the
Yeah.
only way I can describe it,
Yeah.
um, was creating a whole lot of space where if I still wanted that programming, yeah, I could do that. But it wasn't a failure if I didn't. And
Right.
that changed a lot of how I approached healing, how I approached the world, how I approached my interactions with others. A lot
Mm,
of the people who I met there were also on deep healing journeys. So it taught me a lot about my own energetic boundaries as well, because I had been raised in a household that was super traumatic and I developed no energetic boundaries. So
right.
I was an empath with very little protective boundaries. Hang on,
Yeah.
my cat is doing cat things. Stormy, sir.
Hey, baby.
Stormy, sir, this is not a viewing deck. Excuse me. Can you get
That's
off of there? Thank you.
fine.
Come on. And so this dark night of the soul kind of opened up that awareness. And so I started to develop boundaries around saying no to hugging people when they asked to hug me,
Mm,
saying no to people's requests for my time, for my energy,
yeah.
and not feeling as bad about it. Because at that point, I'd already been a physiotherapist professionally for 4 years. And so I tied my worthiness into my ability to heal. And
Right.
that was something that was always needed, but I wasn't always capable.
Mm,
And so coming to terms with that and like shutting down my own little shame voice, that was kind of a big part of my dark night of the soul, the start of my spiritual journey.
yeah.
I would say that's phase one. So like anybody
Easing you right into it, eh?
season one of the dark night of the soul. Anybody who's been through it and comes out knows there's like this eye of the storm.
That's so
And you're like, oh, this is peaceful. There's no way this is how this is going to be forever. And it's not. It's not.
not for long.
Not for long. So shortly after I came back from Thailand and I really started to incorporate things like Reiki, I was a lot more vocal about my love of crystals and how
Mhm.
having these little physical talismans of the ways that time and pressure and the elements that are around you can form into something beautiful. All these different themes started to take place in like my professional world
Yeah.
and in my personal world. And then I started to do things like hosting ecstatic dance
Yes.
because to me, while physiotherapy has it right in the sense that movement is the medicine, oftentimes having somebody tell you how to move is really leaning you out of your own inner knowing. And
Yeah.
a big part of like my spiritual awakening was leaning into my inner knowing and instilling that confidence in other people. And so ecstatic dance was very much a let the music move you
Mhm.
kind of vibe. And it worked really well, in the sense that the people who resonated with it really resonated. You could
Yeah.
move energy, you didn't have to talk. Because a lot of the times, the things that we need to like let go of don't have words.
Absolutely.
And so it tapped into this other like portal of healing.
Yeah. That's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
And ecstatic dance, like, can you explain that for somebody who's never heard of it?
Totally. So there's a couple of different, I guess, iterations of it. The
Mhm.
one that I was introduced to is where somebody is DJing like house music, but it's very intentional in like the beats, the tones, the rhythms there. And it's meant to kind of work up through your energy centers in your body. to literally shake things up. If you think about like a cup of water or a cup of coffee that's been sitting for days and days and days, this sort of
Yeah.
like shakes it up, dumps it out, rinses it out. And then
Right.
you end up just sort of chilling out, listening to music. So you do this through, they call it dance, but it's really just movement. There's no
Right.
choreography, there's no looking ideal or moving in a right way, quote unquote. And the biggest part of it is that you're doing it with other people. So there's a sense
Mm.
of being witnessed by other people about what you're going through without having to explain it. And you're safe. Um, it's also something that is meant to be done without any other influences. So the whole idea, how I described it to people, it's a sober dance party. So think about how people like to go out clubbing. This is
Yeah.
very much that same vibe, but it's more intentional about the healing, about community, in the sense of I need to go move some stuff. I don't know what it is specifically. I just need
Yeah.
to go dance. Yeah.
I've seen
So
you.
when
Sorry, Sarah's like gorgeous on TikTok always, and I've seen you move through and move energy, just feeling drawn to movement. It's incredible to see.
Thank you. It's something that has been a part of my life almost for as long as I've been aware of it.
Mhm.
When I was a little kid, like I said, I dealt with a lot of traumatic stuff, and that includes like the death of my dad when I was like 9. And that was after a long battle with cancer,
Oh,
where I was partially his caregiver in a lot of ways because my parents were
right.
divorced young. Um, and so that put a lot of trauma into my body, into a body that didn't have the cognitive capability for words. It just stored the energy. And so when I was young, I started dancing. And honestly, the first type of music I started dancing to was like Celine Dion,
Amazing.
because that woman's voice just, if anybody is going to yank your soul out,
Yeah,
it's going to be Celine. Okay. Um,
absolutely.
like talk about siren energy.
Yeah.
So in the best way. Um, and so it's been interesting how that's kind of played through my life. So I started training as a dancer when I was maybe 12 or 13. And I continued dancing all through high school. Was a competitive dancer, did it through college, um, did was going to become a professional dancer, and injuries took me out of it. And that's actually what led me into physiotherapy. Was I
Hmm.
couldn't dance professionally, but the physiotherapist that I had worked with helped me at least get back to dancing so that I could still do what I enjoyed doing. And so I would say that that kind of led me to, well, that's what I want to do. I want to help people just do what they want to do. Even if it's not how they wanted to do it, they can still enjoy their life in some ways.
So fucking Sarah. I love that. I love
it's
that.
it's been such a gift, honestly. And like a lot of the last kind of few years of my healing have been a lot about surrender and just presence.
Yeah.
That's some of the most powerful healing that we can give to people, is that presence of just witnessing without trying to fix. You're not always going to make somebody feel better, but just your presence there makes the hard stuff less hard. Um,
Absolute. Are you comfortable talking about that further?
yeah, for sure, for sure. So almost 4 years ago, um, my husband and I were both in accidents and on the same day. And his accident ended up leading to injuries that led to a long, long time in the hospital. And then he ended up dying from his injuries. And there's an interesting synchronicity to the time period between right before I came to get you for our road trip across Canada and that accident. And so the surrender comes in knowing sometimes that there's literally nothing that can be done, and the
Yeah.
more that you fight against that, the more suffering you're going to have.
Mm.
And that was something that I first learned. That seed of that was planted in Thailand when I had a yoga teacher come to me and go, "You're holding on to your suffering like a hot coal." He goes, "You
Oh,
can hold on to it as long as you want." He goes, "Go ahead. You can hold on to that, the loss of your baby. You can hold on to your infertility. You can hold on to that for as long as you want, but it's going to keep burning your hand. He goes, or you can put it down.
That
It's up
just
to you.
reverberated throughout my entire body.
It slaps me in the face every time I hear it, even when
Yeah.
it comes out of my own mouth, because I'm like,
Oh,
ew.
yeah. What is brother? Ooh. Brother.
Brother, ew. What is that? What is that?
No, isn't that the fucking truth?
Because, and the reason why is like for me, anyways, it brings up such this like juxtaposition of surrender and responsibility.
Yeah. Trust
And
and surrender.
trust. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. So the synchronicity around that timeline between my husband's accident and my husband's death, we had just moved into a new house, and this was right at the start of the pandemic. Like
Oh,
the world shut down, so like mid-March, early March.
you picked me up
Um,
in May,
yep.
end of May.
We moved into a new house in late March,
Yeah.
early April. And the place that we moved into was across from this big building. And when we were walking into this house to check it out, I got this like awful chill through my whole body.
Mm.
And I just felt sick to my stomach. And I looked at Mike and I was like, I wonder what that building is. And he's like, I don't know, but I get like a weird, he goes, I don't know, it just feels like a weird, heavy vibe. So we look it up later on. It's a long-term care center for people with injuries that require life-sustaining care on a long-term basis.
Ugh.
So these people who are in there, you know, their quality of life is rough. Like, let's be honest, being in a bed, being on a ventilator, being on feeding tubes, that's hard.
Yeah.
That is hard for everybody involved. And so
Yeah.
Mike and I, throughout our life, my husband's name is Mike. Throughout our life together, we had always talked about what kind of quality of life we wanted. And so a lot of what we talked about was very, very specific. And so when we found out that this was a long-term care center, we randomly started talking about it again, just because we know that everybody's thoughts and preferences change throughout the years. And so also at this time, we had to go and renew our licenses. And so we also updated our organ donor status.
Right.
And this is something that we knew about each other. You know, we're both organ donors, tissue donors. Like, I'm
Don't
not
you
using
know?
this physical vessel anymore. Like, thrift away, you
Yeah.
know? Spread
We
the
love a
spread the
bargain.
love.
Yeah.
Exactly. BOGO. Um, and so around April, we had this kind of very updated conversation about what our standards for our quality of life were, for what we would want, what the conditions would be for, you know, removing any kind of life sustaining care, if that was ever an issue, what we would want done with our bodies, like all this kind of stuff. And these were just normal conversations for us.
Yeah.
Again, having been very close to death at an early age, I feel like I've always walked with death, almost like a death escort. Like, here,
Yeah.
let me walk you to the next dimension.
You're a
So
death
I've always,
sport.
yep, a death escort.
Yeah.
So I've always been comfortable talking about those things because I'd rather know. And 4 months later, I was really glad I knew,
Yeah.
because that is the one thing that I think saved my sanity, that I had to keep fighting for, was when we looked across and found out that that building was a long-term care facility. Mike shivered and he goes, please don't ever put me in a place like that. He goes, if I'm ever in a situation where you have to make a choice, he goes, unplug me, let me go. He goes, like all the appliances to save energy when we go on vacation, unplug me, let me go.
Michael. Oh,
so, and so 4 months later,
the worst.
when he has had a massive traumatic brain injury, and the doctors have literally gone like the full 9 yards to give him every shot at life, to give him every shot at a quality of life. And I had that conversation with them early on because I knew myself well enough to know when my emotions were high, those decisions were going to be harder to make. And
Yes.
as his wife, that is literally the role that I took on, was that if it came to it, those were my decisions that I was going to have to uphold for him. It
Yes.
wasn't even my choice. It was me honoring his decisions and making sure
Exactly.
they were followed.
Yeah.
And so when it came to it, I couldn't keep him imprisoned in a body that wasn't going to be able to move on its own. He wouldn't have had an awareness of the people around him, no way to communicate, no way to regulate his temperature, no way to breathe on his own. That was never a life he would have wanted.
Mm.
Um, and that was
Really?
the hardest thing for me to follow through,
Yeah.
mainly because I had to break the hearts of his family around us.
Yeah.
Um, and to this day, I tell anybody who's getting married, have these conversations. Be ready that you may have to actually do those things much, much sooner than you think. A lot
Yeah.
of people, when they talk about till death do us part at, at their wedding ceremony during their vows, they're thinking 80 years later. They're not
Totally.
thinking 30s, in their 20s, in their 40s. I was 33 when this happened.
Yeah.
And the maturity that it took to really be present with, okay, this is happening. This was the surrender. This is happening.
Yeah.
I can't even be present with all of it still to this day.
No.
Um, but the ability to know what his wishes were, to surrender to what the reality was, and also to really embrace that his physical body is not the limitation of his soul. His energy, nobody's energy, can be contained in a physical form forever.
Yeah.
And his energy has never been destroyed, it's just transformed.
Yeah.
And everybody has their own idea of what happens after our physical form stops existing in this animated flesh suit wandering around. Um, um, for me, I really like to think that he's kind of zooming through dimensions and coming by to pester me every now and then or remind me that he's still around. He's definitely around, like protecting me and that kind of
Yeah.
thing. So while I very much miss the life that we had together and the life we were building, I know he's not gone. And I miss his physical form a lot because electrical work is really complicated, and that was his specialty. And he
Michael.
could literally make me anything out of anything with no plan. Like,
Mike had
he
was
was so
such a
amazing.
beautiful person.
He really
Always.
was. He really, really had like the best energy around him. Like,
Yeah.
and that surrender to what was happening gave me the ability to look back on myself now, almost 4 years later, and be proud of how I handled it. It was the utmost fucked situation, um, like the highest form of fuckery. And
As
the
as your
shit,
as your friend and loved one, I don't know how you made it through that. Like,
I don't,
I think it was a divine, thing for you because just the conversations we'd have, you were so good at putting boundaries in place during that time. Don't ask me
mhm.
how I am. Don't fucking ask me how I am. I will never ask you how you are to this day. I will never say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I'll go, "How's work? What's your week looking like? How's your weekend?" Like I will never ask you how you are from that. But that was a boundary that who can't respect that? Like that is such a respectable boundary.
And it was one of those things that in that time it was so, and even now it is still so important. And like I appreciate so much the people who were able to stand or sit with me in that time, because I tell anybody who knows me now in a much more, I'm a much more regulated person
Of course.
um than I was at that point in the midst of trauma and all kinds of stuff. You're getting a monster of survival. That was
Yeah.
what people were getting out of me. And I had
Yeah.
people wanting me to be very pleasant as a 33-year-old widow,
Get
very
fucked.
demure with
Yeah.
my grieving. And so when people would ask me, "How are you?" And I'm like, "Still fucking shitty, thanks. My husband's still in a jar next to me."
Yeah. Yeah.
It's real fucking awful. And it was interesting to see who could sit with that and
Mhm.
who could not. And the
Yeah.
thing is, not everybody should be able to sit with that. It sucks. It's awful.
That's a
I didn't
great
want to.
point. That's a great
Like
point.
for a lot of people, they feel abandoned in early grief by people they thought were going to be there. And yeah, there were a lot of people who could not hang with the chaos that was going on.
Yeah.
And because of my healing I had done in Thailand, I refused to push it down to make them more comfortable with what I was going through.
Yeah.
And that was one of the biggest gifts I gave to myself. Again, that surrendering to how bad it was.
Yeah.
So when I appreciate you acknowledging that, like, you have no idea how I got through it. And honestly, there was a long, long time where that was,
It was touch
it
and
was,
go.
it was touch
It
and
was touch and
go.
motherfucking
It was
go.
touch and go is right. And I was very lucky to have a lot of supports from you, from other friends who had been with me through that, from my
Yeah.
therapist,
Yeah.
and honestly, from the deep knowing and my belief in reincarnation that if I had offed myself, I would have just reincarnated here and had to do it again.
That's the girl. I can't even tell you. That's the
And
one
I
thing.
was like, I am not coming back again. No, we're done.
Well, and can you explain to me maybe the different perspective and different views maybe that you have on spirituality now versus
Yeah.
before maybe Mike passed?
Yeah. So, let's see. In terms of like spirituality before, I don't think I had as much of an in-depth thought about what happens with our energy and souls. I had very much grown up with like the heaven and hell aspect and then went into
Right.
atheism where I was like, we go into the ground and that's about it. But then when my husband died, I was like, oh, I need something else. I
Yeah.
need just a little something more for me. And
Yeah. Yeah.
every so what kind of came to me came from like the movie Fern Gully when I know,
Krista
girl, I know.
Arnelli.
You know, spoiler alert for the movie at the end when Maggie dies and her whole body just kind of explodes into this firework of sparkles and they
Yeah.
all land on people and they're carrying this light. I was like, that resonates for me.
Oh, I love
That
that.
Mike sprinkled little bits of his magic into all of the people that loved him, that he loved. Um, and it's our gift and our privilege to be able to carry that forward however we want. Um, and it's been helpful for me to see like signs of him close by. And there
Mm,
are things that I'll directly ask for and things that I knew or know that he would put forward for me, things that, you know, wouldn't make sense in another way or another realm.
right.
Um, and knowing that there's so much more than what we know and understand.
Yeah.
And having that openness to the idea that he may have reincarnated to somebody else walking around on the planet.
Mhm.
This may have been his last reincarnation on Earth, and he's off in the astral realms doing other work,
Yeah.
doing other things. And I like that idea quite a lot.
I think it's beautiful. I absolutely do. Now, have
And
you had any readings or any, tell me about it. What kind of readings have you?
yeah, so most of my readings have come from you, my good darling. Yes, and they have always been very on point, to the point of like, I know you're comfortable with this idea, but the cards are saying something
We
new.
got to move it along a little different.
Yep, exactly. Um, so oftentimes, even when I don't have a particular question or a thing that I can verbalize wanting help with, they'll bring insight to me. And it's like this quiet, not call, it's a quiet calling in. It's a
Yeah.
quiet calling in of like, you know this, you're struggling with this. Here's the menu of options. Take what you
Yeah.
will. And so that's always been kind of the interesting gift of readings, both from you and I've had, let me see. No, in terms of like tarot readings, I think you're the only person I've ever had tarot readings from. I do tarot for myself.
Right.
Um, But I've had healing sessions from other
Yeah.
people. So like sound healing sessions. I have been very privileged to do ayahuasca, which I think is one of the most transformative healing modalities I've utilized.
Yeah.
Um, that is a no joke journey. That
No.
is that is the Moldavite of the plant healing world. That
Totally.
is, I'm ready to fuck shit up and start over. And it is true because there's two things you need to know about ayahuasca. One, you are going to feel terrified at some point. You're going to have to lean into it. And two, you are going to puke and shit your brains out.
Yeah, that's the one I know.
For hours. Like people, when they think about a healing session, they're thinking about like a 1 hour thing. No, just so I've done 3 ayahuasca healing sessions at this point over the last like 4 or 5 years. And they have all taken 8 hours. 8 hours. Now, I have not had the purging that has been like absolutely shatter my body and leave me shaking in the corner for a while.
All the blood vessels in the face.
And I've been very lucky that my curandero has been an incredibly supportive presence throughout the years. It wasn't just like a, hey, you're here for the session, I'll never see you again. No, he's somebody who I've communicated with throughout the years as I've integrated. And that's kind of the cool thing that I like about ayahuasca is it's a healing and integration process. It's the taking of the plant medicine, the journeying of the plant medicine, the purging part, that's just one part of it. It's just like the screaming meditations in Thailand. It's clearing out the space.
Yeah.
And you still have to organize everything else afterwards. Kat, if you do not leave my apophyllite alone.
I got to look up apophyllite again. Isn't that spiritual?
I'll bring it. Yes, it is.
I've got a bunch at home. I'm just trying to think of, oh, I love it. Stormy, you've got good taste, baby.
I know, right? He really does. Here, Stormy, you want to check that one out here.
Ayahuasca was a modality that like really worked for you. What other kind of modality?
Sound healing was another one that I really enjoyed in the sense that, again, on an energetic level, it's shaking things up and like clearing them out and then replacing them with a different frequency.
Oh, I love that.
So the idea that our healing occurs on like a physical, emotional, a cellular level, on a spiritual level, all of that occurs at different frequencies, different wavelengths, and tapping into that in different ways is like being at a healing buffet where you can go, I need a little of this, I need a little of that. Because there have been times where for me, moving is not accessible. I'm not able to dance in the way that would be healing, but I can utilize music and sound to do the same sort of thing.
Oh, I love that.
It's so powerful. Like I encourage anybody who kind of wants a lay back and chill approach to healing, do sound healing. You don't have to go to a sound healing class. You can listen to Insight Timer, different like frequency sounds, like songs. There's even like healing house music that's coming out now. I've just been following a new creator and I have been like bopping out to it.
All that on TikTok.
Between that and like my lesbian pop playlist.
Yeah. Just a somatic badass waiting to happen.
Oh God. Right? I also use plant medicines. So I smoke weed because it does a whole lot, again, to just calm things down so that I can process.
Yeah.
Like a lot of healing is almost like going through wait, I have the right analogy for this. Hold on. So healing in my world is around CPTSD, so complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It is something that happens to people who have endured a lot of repeated, chronic, complex trauma in their life, and it rewires how your brain handles things. So for me, my traumas are like doom boxes. So, and all of my neurodivergent girls, gays, and nays and boys will know that a doom box is something that you put everything into and you put it in a closet for when you can deal with it.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of trauma boxes all around my little inner noggin. And so a lot of the time, something will just come and dump them all out. And weed gives me enough time and space to start putting things back into the boxes and sometimes getting rid of things.
Right. To sift it.
So exactly.
Yeah.
And everybody kind of has their things that they can use to do that.
Yeah.
And I'm all for that. I think that having, again, that buffet of healing modalities available
Mhm.
is such a privilege. It really is.
It
Not everybody
absolutely
has
is.
the time, the space, the access, the connection, the safety,
Money. Yeah.
the money, the
Yeah.
safety
Yeah. The
to access,
safety
learn about these things.
is huge. When did you feel safe enough to start healing?
Um,
I know for
I would
myself,
say, hmm?
all right, shockingly enough, it was when I was on the farm with my ex. It was, I had a security and home and, bills were paid for, food was everything. I didn't have to, I've been on my own since I was, 15 on and off and
Yeah.
17 for good and all of that. So I
Mhm.
finally felt secure and safe enough to start my healing journey in like 2017, 2018.
Yeah. I would say mine probably started in like 2016
Mhm.
when I started feeling safe enough. And again, that very much started in like the nest of my life with Mike,
Yeah,
in that I always had a pretty stable home with him. Like we moved around a lot, but I
yeah,
was always safe with him. And he was such a safe presence. And it started with Reiki and yoga and drumming. And has just kind of continued to expand there through Reiki, um, like being a practitioner myself, and then still receiving from you mostly, just because
yeah.
it, for me, I'm picky. I'm a picky bitch.
I
Um,
love it.
Anybody listening, Krista is your gal
Stop.
for Reiki healing and tarot reads and all of your crystal delights. Um,
I didn't pay
uh,
her, guys, I promise.
you wouldn't have to. The friendship is enough. But yeah, having those kind of components made me feel safe. I think also because I had something to return to. So when
Ooh.
Mike died in 2020 and I was dealing with my own injuries from my accident, it took me out of work. So my injuries from the accident that I was in disabled me,
Yeah.
um, and meant that I could not work. All I could do was sit in the trauma and my grief. And I did that for about 3 years. So I would say that was kind of the other phase of feeling safe enough to heal. And
Yeah.
again, I was very privileged during those years that I didn't have to worry about money.
Mhm.
I was smart about what I did with my money, but I didn't have to
Absolutely.
worry about money. I was able to afford not working
Yeah.
for that time. I was able to afford my job became therapy.
Yeah.
So fortunately, maybe 6 months before the accident, I had reached out to a therapist who specialized in complex trauma. Um, and a week after the accidents, she happened to call me and say, "Hey, so I have an opening for you. You've been on my wait list for a bit. Would you still like to come in and talk about your childhood triggers?" And I was like, I do want to come in. New problem, new problem.
Adult
And
triggers. Thank you.
yeah, current trauma, current, ongoing, in the thick of it. I
Yeah.
hope you have a life vest. And so her name is Linda, and she was and is still somebody who I attribute with the fact that I'm still alive today, is because she called me and she took me onto her caseload, and she has witnessed both my shattering, rotting, decomposing,
Yep.
and somehow growing into something new now.
The
Um,
rebirth.
totally. And even enough of a rebirth to like be open to finding joy again. So one of the quotes that hit me in the last number of years, no, the last year or two maybe, was, "You're not healing to handle the trauma. You already know how to do that. You're
You're
healing to
healing to
handle the
handle the
joy."
joy.
Ugh,
Bitch, when I
again.
tell you that fucking thing slapped me across the face, up and down, and then turned me around and spanked me on the ass and sent me out the fucking door.
Right?
Yeah.
And like not in the way I like, okay?
Yeah.
Like Like,
It wasn't
that's
consensual.
no, it was not. But it was needed, like
Yeah.
water. I don't want it, but I need it.
Yeah.
Hearing that, it gave me that permission of I'm doing this not to prepare for the next horrible thing that's going to inevitably happen,
Yeah.
but rather to embrace and be fully present with everything that happens between now and then.
Yeah.
Um, because one of the things that I told my therapist early on was like, look, I haven't gone a decade without like a capital T trauma. Like I got a 10 out of 10 score on my ACE test, the adverse childhood experiences test. Okay. I win the trauma Olympics. Give me my gold
I
medal.
want my ribbon. Thank you.
And she looks at me and goes, how are you at handling joy and receiving support? I was like, I'm going to leave now.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Oh yeah, I forgot to ask your sun, moon, and rising because this will play into that.
Yeah, so I'm a Taurus sun and a Cancer moon and a Cancer rising. So
Yeah.
I
So
am stubborn, grounded, nurturing, and emotional.
and boundaried because cancers love to stay in their tiny little shells and come out and fucking snippity snap when people get too close. And I love that for
Exactly.
me and you.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Linda met me with the appropriate level of like sass and sarcasm. And so it was really cool to be able to go kind of full circle with her from like those early days of trauma, where I was literally just surviving, where she's just hypnotizing me so that I can maybe get 15 minutes of sleep.
Yeah.
And then going to a point where I told her like, hey, I've been friends with this woman for a while. So like side quest, 2 years into my widowed life, I was on TikTok. I was making content about widowed life and healing and these sorts of things. And I came across a woman's profile who was also a young widow. And her video, it hit my intuition the way that when I met Mike hit my intuition, how I chose my college hit my intuition, moving to Canada, going to Thailand, all of these like undeniable hits where I'm like, I can try to fight this for as long as I want. It's going to nag me and bug me. I'm not going to waste time.
Yeah.
And so I messaged her and we ended up becoming very good friends. And then we ended up falling in love.
Yeah.
And so the ability to integrate that intellectual knowing of I've healed not to handle the trauma, but to embrace the joy.
Yeah.
Because something bad is going to happen again in my life.
Yeah.
It's inevitable. But I want to grab and hold on to as much joy in that interim as I can.
Yeah.
I'm going to balance the scales, damn it.
Do you think that would be the advice that you would give to yourself at the beginning of this journey?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Was like, allow yourself room for your grief, for your rage, for your desolation, for the death.
Yeah.
But also allow room for everything else too.
Yeah.
If I could go back to that like previous version of myself, even before Mike died, I would have told myself that. And then immediately after, I would have told myself like, look, you can fight this notion all you want. You're allowed to be happy again because you're still allowed to be sad. Yeah. And that's the other thing that I would tell people is that in my experience, being happy has not changed me also being sad. I am still sad. I still miss my husband immensely. I still grieve him, and I will grieve him for the rest of my days.
Absolutely.
And I made enough room. I expanded myself enough to allow myself to love another person. And that has been such a gift. It's been such a gift because really, like when we allow people close to us, whether it's in friendship, whether it's family, whether it's in romantic partnership, we're allowing somebody to be a mirror for us. Mm-hmm. And that takes a lot of vulnerability. Yeah. And really one of the promises that I made to myself every time I've actively chosen to stay alive is that if I'm going to do this shit, I'm going to do this shit. Yeah. I'm not doing it halfway. I'm not playing small. I'm not just getting by. I'm not just going to survive forever. There will be times where I have to, but it's the means to an end. Yeah. I'm going to thrive even if it fucking kills me.
I love, like, truly, I love that. It's so inspiring, just as like you've seen me through the worst days of my life, and to see you move through everything and find joy and to find your own life, like you're carving out the life you want to live. And that it doesn't matter to me if you're 100 years old, if you're 20 years old, if you're 30 years old, whenever it happens, it's a joy and an inspiration to witness and to view and to
Mhm.
even just see like the growth. Like you said, you've expanded yourself to make this room. Like two things can be true. You can be sad and you can be joyous. They can
Mhm.
coexist. And so like
Yep.
I love that you touched on that, and like that it has not impacted your ability to grieve and your ability to still
Mhm.
feel in those moments and miss Mike, but it also allows you to not miss out on your joy and your happiness. What a
Yeah.
what a beautiful fucking lesson in a, dark place, you know?
It's been a wild lesson to learn. And I would even say like not only that it allows room, but it actually dives me deeper. And this is something
Yeah.
Des is my partner's name. She and I talk about when we talk about how when we met each other, we were both still in survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
And experiencing joy together gave us like a safe harbor so that when we got drop kicked into the deep ends of our grief, we actually went a lot deeper into that. Our healing went deeper because we had a joyous like touch point to come back to.
Yeah.
And
Cellular
it's
memory.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
yeah, totally. So yeah, it's been a very, very wild journey filled with a lot of different exploration of modalities, both to like keep myself earthside. And this is
Yeah.
one thing I'll say to like early grievers, do whatever it takes to keep
Yeah.
yourself alive.
Yeah.
Um, one of the things somebody gave me as like permission was any money spent on something that keeps you alive is money well spent. It's not wasted. So like early on in my grief days when I didn't want to talk to nobody and I was not really keen to be here, I would sit on crystal live sales and I would
Fucking
increase
hell.
my
You
my
guys should see Sarah's collection. It's my
my
favorite.
collection is I love it so much. And to me, like once I ordered a crystal, well, I had to wait until it got here.
Yeah, you
So
couldn't
even if
go
I
in the
had,
middle.
no, I couldn't go. The package will remain unopened. Somebody else will get my crystal. And as a tourist, I'm not letting anybody have something that's mine.
That money
No.
ain't going out to nobody. You paid for it. It's coming right, 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 right.
And then it was like a little reward for surviving, you know? So
Girl, the amount of TikTok fucking sound bites that we've got, it's a little reward. It's like,
yeah.
it's so true. It kept you here. It kept you happy.
It did. And now when I look around at my collection, I'm reminded of all of the moments that I chose myself,
Hmm.
that I chose perseverance. I chose overcoming.
You
Uh,
prioritized your healing.
yep, I chose to stay. Something that I told myself in like my really, really dark moments is that someday there were going to be moments where I went, I'm so glad I didn't miss this.
Yeah.
And there have been so many, so many. And like it's hard to even capture them all. But for anybody in the thick of it, or when you do go through major losses, major transformations, times where you're out of control, your life has been destroyed, and you're
Yeah.
looking at the rubble going, I got to rebuild. I don't
Yeah.
want to. Just know that you have the permission to make room for joy, that you have permission to take up for your grief to take up space. Let
Mhm.
it take up space. Let it
Yeah.
take up as much time as it needs. Buy yourself as much time as you can.
Yeah.
And that there's going to be so much you'll be glad you didn't miss.
Yeah. I mean, my God, what more can one say, right? Like, and it's I did a solo episode where I talked about what I wish I knew, and you and I are soul sisters in that way.
Mm-hmm.
I did
We
not
definitely.
know that I could feel like this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it
Yep.
doesn't mean I feel good every day, bitch, not even maybe once a month sometimes, but it it's more so that like those moments carry me through.
Mm-hmm.
And like with all that said, like because you've been through such a transition, so much transformation, I'm sure your daily spiritual practices have changed, but what are your daily spiritual practices like these days?
Yeah, so I sit with crystals every day while I'm like meditating, having my little wake and bake, having my little like smoke or whatever. I have my nice little coffee, so I like stir my intentions into my coffee. That's when I stir my
Mhm.
gratitude in. I pull tarot cards for myself. Mm, I talk to Mike a lot.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of my big spiritual practices that came up in the last number of years. And I still do like Reiki on myself. I do Reiki healings for other people at times, and it's something that again, like I'm kind of getting back into.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm happy to pay, girlfriend. I'm happy to
girl,
pay. Yeah.
girl. And then that would lead into my next thing. Like tattooing is one of the other big spiritual practices for me too.
Yeah.
Um,
Does that
so
help you
yeah,
feel connected to spirit, to your experiences?
yeah, and it helps me feel grounded in my intentions in a way.
Hmm.
So it's also like a physical manifestation of like my evolution as a person.
Alchemy.
So totally,
Yeah.
totally. And it's like I'll call it like the blood magic of releasing, physically releasing, like bloodletting,
Yeah.
and replacing it with something beautiful in its place.
Mm.
And so, like, a lot of my tattoos have kind of a mantra behind them, have something that I want to remember,
An
sort of
intention.
like exactly an intention so that I can look at it. I can look at my very changed person. Hang on, my cat is. I can look at my very changed person, my very changed physical self, and remember that I chose certain things. I love that that came up as I like just shattered a bowl.
Is that what happened?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
God.
okay. It's fine. But it's just funny how like we can talk about, looking at changed things and then you have this like physical confirmation in the world like,
Yep, it's changed. Things are
yep,
different.
it's changed. and um and being able to embrace that as just it's a part of me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When do you feel the most connected to your spirituality?
Ooh. Probably when I'm standing like in a forest or when I am in nature
Yeah.
is when I'm most connected to like my interpersonal spirituality.
Mhm.
I would say what I'm most connected to, like the spirituality that I share with other people, is definitely like in my work now.
Yeah.
Um, so being able to share like that healing with the families that I work with and the people that I work with, and being present for like their whole journey, because people will come to me with pain, and I'm able to sit and hold space for the entirety of their experience.
Yeah.
Because we're not silos.
No, and that's it's such a beautiful service that you provide for like not only do they get the physical things taken care of, but you hold space for them to be a whole and complete person in other ways as well. It's
And
beautiful.
that and it's such a privilege. Like I think for me too, it's confirmation that my spiritual journey has been so worth it in so many ways.
Yeah.
Um, in that not only am I able to be present with my own experiences without denying them, without putting like shoving them down or making them palatable, without
Mm,
running away from them, but I can also sit with other people's experiences and not need to control how they're feeling about it. I can sit with people's discomfort and
yeah.
have the boundary of like, yes, I see you. This is not mine. And so when I leave, I'll usually do like kind of an energy sweep
Yeah.
over my body and like hold on to like a quartz and a tourmaline and just visualize that kind of draining off of me.
That grounded.
Um, yeah, exactly.
Keeping your spiritual hygiene 100 all the way.
Precisely. And even like in my work, because I work in healthcare, I wash my hands so often that that's oftentimes I'll like do that energy sweep and then wash my hands. And then I usually finish off. any interaction or like experience with like acknowledging to the universe that I saw that and I really took in like the depth and breadth of the impact that that had on me. So I'll say like, happy, thank you, more, please.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yes, happy, thank you, more, please.
Happy, thank you, more
Oh,
Penny.
hi, Pennifer.
My
Hi,
gosh,
Penny.
Sarah's beautiful fucking dog just came in and hi, Penny. I love you, Mama.
Hi, the baby.
Oh, I love her. I used to walk her
This
down.
girl.
We have
Yep.
adventures.
She's probably been my other biggest healing modality. I thought I
Yeah.
didn't hear that shout out, my girl. This girl has kept me alive.
I
Because
said it.
she's been like, let's go outside. Let's
Yeah,
go
you have to get
outside.
up. You have to
Yeah.
move. You have to physically get up. I've said for years, shrimp saved my life.
Hmm.
Absolutely saved my life.
Right.
Now what advice would you have for somebody else who's starting out on their spiritual journey?
Hmm. I would say follow your curiosity.
Mm.
There are a myriad of different paths to go down in terms of learning about what resonates for you. So the first thing would be to follow your curiosity. The second thing would be to establish a knowing of your inner yes and no. So,
Ooh.
what is like a whole body yes to you? What is a whole body no? What does that look like and feel like in your body? Because oftentimes my brain operates off of programming that isn't always in alignment with my best good, but my body, my gut, that bitch knows. That
Yeah,
bitch knows.
she
And all I have to
steers.
do is, yeah, all I have to do is know how to listen to her and trust.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, I love.
and
Um,
talk to people. Like the more community that you can get into that
yes.
aligns with your curiosity, the better. Because then you're just going to get exposed to all these cool things.
Well, this is it. And like from, like you say, from where you started, even long before Mike passed, even before you even met Mike, to where you are now, like the growth, the collection, the absorption of experiences, that's the hardest thing I think for spiritual journeys is to know that like everything is happening to take you to a place. And when we don't have the foresight, when we can't see the spiral of life and we don't know what's coming around that corner, like you said, it's so hard to trust and to accept that what is meant for us is coming for us, what we want is wanting us. And, you know, it's going to it's going to be so great. You're going to have so much joy, but you have to fucking believe it. That's the
Yep.
part for me
Mhm.
specifically today.
I, yeah, big, yes, yes,
Snaps and
yes.
claps.
No, no lies detected.
And like, what resources can you recommend for people who are looking to explore their spirituality or looking to heal with grieving, learning more about crystals, like any of your kind of,
Yeah. So in terms of grieving, I would say Google like death doulas, people who specifically support grievers, death, that transition. Just like we have doulas for birth, we have
yeah,
doulas for death as well.
yeah,
Um, so Googling these people and like watching their content, looking at what they talk about, those sorts of things, they can just offer little seeds that you can plant whenever you want and need. And just jumping off points too. For crystals, honestly, like the crystals are going to choose you.
that's what I
So
say.
they are going to choose you. So you
Yeah,
can Google the meanings. You can look in all of the books. Like you can read through every like version of the Crystal Bible or go on like mindat.org and learn about, the different crystals from a metaphysical or like a gemological standpoint.
yeah,
But ultimately, what comes into your sphere and what you're drawn to, you're not really in control of that.
no,
Um, and man, that's played out so much in my life. Like I acquired my first crystal came to me when I was like 4, and it was in this lady's windowsill, which now I look back and I'm like, she was charging her crystals.
yeah.
And I just became obsessed with this little pyrite chunk.
Love.
And being 4 and having no No, not quite the morals. I was a little klepto. I just kind of like nagged it. And she was a neighbor, and so she came down and she was like, "Hey, I think my pyrite came home with you. It seemed like it wanted to have like a little sleepover with you. You go ahead and hang on to that, okay?" And so it was
Aw,
this very sweet acknowledgement of like, you were so drawn to this that you had to have it. It's yours. And
that's beautiful.
that's it's so like, I think back on that story with such love. Like, and
If
that's
any
something I carry forward now. Like,
if any of my friends' fucking kids came over to my house and snagged a fucking crystal, I would shake them upside down on the way out and be like, "Do you know what you just took from me?" Which is why I don't have children and soon won't have a uterus.
uterus, uterus.
But I got
We love the
crystals.
child-free life. Yep, we love the child-free life. I love my auntie life because I have all my crystals and the things, and nobody touches them when I don't want them in my house, and I get to enjoy my nibblings when they do come, and then I send them home. Um, you know, speaking of crystal fairies, I still have the fluorite tower that you, my dear, gave me
I was thinking about that earlier too.
during during one of our first episodes of interactions together. But yeah, this baby has gone all over the place with me.
Oh,
Um, so yeah,
it's a
little
beautiful
tangent.
tower to those who can't see.
It's gorge.
And Sarah's physiotherapy page and healing practice. What do you want to tell
is
everybody?
is so has recently been rebranded to be called Fluorite Physiotherapy and Healing. And the reason behind this actually came from a little bit of like concept inspo from Des. She's brilliantly supportive in these sorts of things. She told me, "Well, you love crystals and they emanate different energies." She said, "Why don't you pick, like 4 or 5 energies you really want to be central to your practice, to your business, to your work, and find what crystal that aligns with the most." And so I started thinking about like the core values of my practice as a healer. And they were things like balance, protection. So, like having that balance and safety, having focus,
Yeah.
and just like deep, deep overall healing. And when I looked up, what crystals would have these properties, fluorite was the number one. And I just cracked up because when I look through my, collection, fluorite is one of the more prominent specimens that I have
I
and has
love
been
that.
with me. My second crystal that I ever got was a fluorite when I was a kid too. And so it was just sort of it's such a beautiful, like full circle moment that like my practice and my business and my work in this world has really kind of tied in the things that I'm really passionate about, and is super like wholehearted and authentic about both
Yeah.
my experiences, what's shaped the way that I interact with people,
Mhm.
and also the things that give me joy. So yeah.
Anybody who is lucky enough to ever be in the care of Sarah is the luckiest person in the world because
You-
not everybody has a practitioner, not everybody has a healer like you. Your intention, your application, your follow through is all second to none and absolutely unparalleled. So I can speak from personal experience, and I know a lot of your patients, a lot of your patients. This is what happens when you live in a fucking tiny mountain town and everybody knows each other. But mean, this is the best. So, Sarah, where will people
Thank
be
you,
able
darling.
to reach out to you?
Thank you so much for those sweet words. That is high praise. I'm honored to receive. Thank you, darling. People can contact me directly through my email, which is fluoritephysio@gmail.com.
It'll be linked in the show
I
notes.
on my Instagram page, which currently doesn't have any posts yet, but will. Um,
That will also
well,
be
will by
linked
the
in the,
time this launches. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and that's also Fluorite Physio and Healing. And soon I'll have a website up, which will be linked on the Instagram page. So yeah, reach out with any questions.
Uh, do you have any little nuggets that you would like to kind of leave our friends with?
I would say one of the most potent healing modalities that I didn't touch on, but I want to just really quickly as like the final thing for people to think about.
Yeah.
The connections that you engender and share with people will be actually, we did touch about it by talking about mirrors, but those connections that you make with people will be the most powerful medicine. So make sure you know your whole body, yes, your whole body, no, who feels like they fill you up, and
Yes.
lean into those people because they will not only help you stay here, they will make staying here worth it.
Oh,
So
I
I
just,
have a deep bow of gratitude to you, my dear friend Krista. Like, I am so honored and just privileged to be in your life and to have you in mine and to be on this podcast with you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm
This is like
so
a
fucking
wild honor.
grateful. Honestly, I know we're gonna do another episode together, I'm sure, because
Yes.
I could talk to you for 75 days. But
Thanks.
thank you from the bottom of my heart for trusting in this, opening up, sharing with everybody your spiritual wins, your spiritual downfalls, and your journey all together. So love and appreciate you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. And thank you, Sarah.
So much love to everybody. Thank you, Krista. Have a great day.
You too, Angel.